Welcome to bass drum and hi-hat techniques of the drumming system. Now you might hear the term, don't ignore the feet. I know I've seen this written in a lot of drum magazines. I've heard drummers talk about it at drum clinics and various workshops. And it's true. I mean, a lot of drummers are so focused on getting amazing hands, which is what we want, we forget about the lower part of our body. Now, some of the excuses that I've heard was, well, you know, I just play in a top 40 band and I don't need to use my feet. As long as I can play the bass drum on 1 and 3 or 1 and 3 and, I'm happy. Now the problem with that is that sometimes I have drummers who have been playing longer than me come to me for lessons. And I wonder, how can someone who's been playing longer than me need to learn something from me? Well, the main reason is they may have ignored certain parts of their drumming, such as the feet, bass drum, and hi-hat techniques. Now some of the guys that come study with me have amazing hands. They can play traditional grip, match grip, upside down, crossovers, hand flips, twirls, all kinds of stuff. And their feet have simply been doing nothing for 20 years. This foot's been trained to hold the hi-hat down. The right foot is trained to play some very basic bass drum patterns. So when these drummers come to me, I say, well, first thing we have to do is we have to maybe ignore the hands for a while or not practice them as much, because we want to try to get the feet at least somewhere near where the hands are as far as strengthening them. Now, there's a lot more muscles in our legs, ankles, thighs, hips than there are in our hands, and bigger muscles too. So we have to start spending some time on developing bass drum and hi-hat techniques. Let me share with you what I like to do. So the first thing that I like to do is take a look at heel down playing to see how strong your heel down playing is for softer tempos. Or just if you decide to be a heel down player all the time, that's great too. There's nothing wrong with that. So here's what heel down playing would look like. Now if you notice, my heel did not lift off of the foot plate or the heel plate. It simply was down the whole time. Now a lot of the drummers that I see do that, after like a minute they're going, oh, I can feel it, I can feel it. Well, according to my personal trainer, that muscle is called the tibialis anterior. There's your medical term for the day. And it's a very difficult muscle to develop because it's on the other side of the calf. And when we walk, we use our calves all the time. There's very few things that we do that really exercise that front leg muscle. This is one of the exercises that will do that. So what I would suggest starting to do right off the bat is just start practicing heel down, even if it's just a simple pattern like just playing quarter notes, for as long as you can. So for you double bass players, yes, you want to go and practice this with double bass. Now you might be thinking, well, man, I can play already supersonically fast with my heels up. But the focus of this is heels down. Now, the reason for that is if you strengthen that tibialis anterior muscle, you'll be amazed at when you go back to heel up, how you're going to even be faster because you're really developing control as well. When we have control in that front leg muscle, it's absolutely amazing what we can start to do with our feet. And I've learned these techniques from one of my teachers, Dom Famulero, who said, I have to start practicing with heel down. He said, because most of the stuff that I was doing was heel up. He says, just for now, to give you something new to practice. And for me, after already playing 20 years, I'm always looking for new things to practice. So I started going back through all the exercises that I can do playing heel down. And man, was that ever a challenge. I did it with my right foot, then did it with my left foot. And if I had a double bass setup, I'd actually go back and play some songs that were very simple, not double bass, but just try to play the songs with my left foot heel down. Maybe a simple song, do an AC/DC tune or Billie Jean by Michael Jackson, but try to get the power out of playing heel down. That's the challenge. After running through a couple tunes like that, you're going to feel that front muscle burning. So that's a big one, and you can do that anywhere. You don't even need drums to practice heel down. You can just sit on the rug, in front of the TV and have your foot just playing, just doing that. You're always exercising that muscle. If you're going to do it in school, make sure your teacher doesn't freak out on you. Do it soft. Okay, I used to do that in school quite a bit, but I think I was doing, almost heel up stuff, and I think I drove a few of my teachers crazy when I was in high school. But the thing is, it's always good to practice that stuff. You don't need a drum set to even practice this technique. And another one you can practice to develop the front shin muscle is an exercise. I'm just going to take my foot off the pedal for a second here. I'm going to plant my toe. I'm just going to move my heel back and forth like this. And it's almost like a little warm-up that I use. This is something that Dom Famularo also showed me. To just do this. And you can do it with both feet, if I need to. And just practice that. Or you can put your feet on the pedals and do it. Not getting a sound. I'm just simply trying to stretch all these different muscles in my legs. The front muscles, side muscles, a little bit of the calf. It's absolutely amazing what this is going to do for you over time. But you've got to be patient because this isn't going to happen overnight. This might take quite a bit of time. Okay? One other suggestion that I might have for you is once you start developing your heel down technique is take the book Stick Control and go through the entire book, even though that book is called Stick Control Developed for the Hands. Try to play through that whole book heel down with your feet only. And I've done that, and it might seem kind of boring, but while I was doing it, I'd get the pattern in my head, and I'd throw a magazine on my snare drum, and I'd be reading articles on my favorite drummers while practicing heel down. And sometimes I'd have good days, it would work for an hour. Some days when the muscles were sore, I might only get 5 minutes, but that's okay, because when you're feeling pain on certain days or a burn, that just simply means that the muscles are growing and healing. It's not a bad thing. Now, the one thing about the feet as well is you have to be able to distinguish the difference between pain and burn. Remember, pain is bad. You don't want pain, but if it's a burn, that's good because you are exercising those muscles. I mean, some of the finger control exercises that I do and that I've talked about in my Moeller Method Secrets video, I talk about various finger control exercises where we feel some burn in the forearms. But it's not nearly as much as these big leg muscles we have. So you might feel a little more burn in the legs than you might be in the hands. But don't worry, that's okay. The burn is good. If it's pain, that's different. Stop, maybe, go visit a doctor and say, look, I'm dealing with some pain here. But burn, don't rush out to see your doctor on a good burn. The next thing we'll talk about is the heel up technique. Now, with heel up, there's a few different ways that we can do this. I mean, because heel up can be extreme, such as having my heel really, really high. I've seen some videos where certain drummers play with their heels way up there, like past a 45-degree angle. That's a little bit too extreme for me, but when I watch these videos, these guys are playing them and it's working amazing. So if that works for you, go for it, okay? What I've been trying to do is stay as relaxed as possible and lift my heel just a little bit, maybe just an inch off the heel plate, and then try to play from that point. Now realizing that when I play heel up, I am getting my whole leg into the equation. With heel down, it was just from the ankle. There was no leg involved. It was just from the ankle and the foot. With heel up, I have to get my whole leg into it, from my hip, all the way through my thigh, the knee, the lower part of my leg, into the ankle, finally with the foot. So this is a big one. This is the power stroke for the bass drum for any drummer. So by lifting my heel, I'm going to play this with a convincing sound. Something like this. So you can see and hear that it's definitely a more powerful stroke. The whole leg was getting into there, and that's something that I see a lot of drummers doing, especially rock drummers and the big powerful double bass guys. It's the same thing, is you want to get a very powerful stroke. Now, for you double bass guys, or for those of you who want to get into double bass, is just practice that technique with the left foot only. . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . Now if I demonstrate the difference between the heel down sound and the heel up sound, here's the heel down sound. I'll play with both pedals so you can see how it looks. I'll play heel down for a second, and then I'll play heel up. Here's heel down. Notice how you couldn't see my legs moving? It was all from the ankle and just the foot. Now if we go heel up, pay attention to what's happening with my legs. Watch where my feet are going to be placed on the pedal as I do this. So you can definitely see the difference between the two. Now you might go, well, I like the sound of heel up better. Well, a lot of drummers do. But then again, I'm just speaking to, a majority, but not everybody out there. But you want to practice heel down. There are some amazing drummers out there like Marvin Smitty Smith and Dom Famularo who can play heel down and play louder than I can play with heel up. So you'd be amazed at what you can do with the heel down technique as well. It's going to take a little longer to develop, but once you have it, you have full control of your feet. A tip that I got from a drummer named Gene Hoglan, who is, in my opinion, one of the greatest speed metal drummers on this planet. Gene was talking about developing stamina when he's playing. And I've seen him in clinic a couple of times, and the question always comes up is how does he get so fast and so powerful and able to continue this on? This is a question that I get asked a lot. And I'm not really a really fast, crazy double bass drummer because I don't spend a lot of time on that, but I am spending time on it right now. I'm trying to get my feet to where I want them to be, because in the past I haven't been doing a lot of crazy double bass stuff. I love to listen to that music and I love to check those drummers out. So I'm kind of on a quest right now of trying to get the ultimate feat as well. So I'm in the same boat as you guys at home there, where I'm trying to get my double bass playing really fast. When I talked to Gene, I said to Gene, what's the secret? There's got to be a secret to getting the stamina there because we get tired, okay? And his answer was ankle weights. He said, go to a sporting goods store and buy some heavy ankle weights and play with them on. Practice with them, and I thought, wow, that makes total sense. I kind of thought of it as, when you watch a baseball player that's about to bat, go up to practice, and you see him over beside the bullpen there. He's either got two bats in his hand, or he puts on that big sort of hard rubber donut on the end of the bat, and he's swinging. He's just warming up to try to get everything loosened up and playing. And of course, when he goes to bat, he takes the ring off or puts one of the bats down and goes and bats and hits a home run. Same thing for drummers. The ankle weights are kind of like that. And I've gone back just recently to the ankle weights, and it's amazing how even in the last couple of months, my speed has improved. So if I continue to do this all the time, I'm hoping that my speed will someday be as fast as Gene Hoglan's. Now another great technique for bass drum is the slide technique. This is going to be used when we want to incorporate fast doubles back to back on the bass drums. And it's always fun when I get a new student come and we play something and I accidentally sneak in a little double with the bass drum and they've got this look like, how'd you do that? How'd you do that? So of course, the next lesson we end up spending a half hour discussing, the slide technique of the bass drum to how to get two fast doubles back to back. So there are a few aspects of getting this technique down. The first one is a good bass drum pedal. Now you don't have to rush out and go buy the most expensive bass drum pedal in the market, but you want to have a decent one. If it's something that's been handed down to you from 100 generations ago that's held together with duct tape and elastics, this may not be the best starting point, Invest in a decent pedal. Go visit your local music store, talk to your drum guy and say, look, I'm trying to develop this new technique. I need something that's going to work better than this other lousy rental pedal I have or a very beginner pedal. Once you've got a good pedal and a good setup, you can actually adjust the springs. So the idea is to make sure that the spring feels comfortable for you. Most pedals nowadays have very good adjustments right on them themselves. You don't need a manual this thick to figure out how to do it. It's pretty self-explanatory. Then it becomes personal. You have to decide, do you want the pedal to be tight? Do you want the pedal to be loose? Do you want it to be medium? I would suggest trying all three. Try tight, try medium, and then try loose, and see which one best suits you. The next one, believe it or not, is footwear. Now, this is something that I've been kind of exploring in the past few years. I originally started off playing in bare feet. I was always practicing down in my basement, and just go down there with a pair of shorts on, and that's pretty much all I was wearing, and I'd play drums. And I found that my feet really stuck to the pedals, especially, on a hot, muggy day. I wasn't sliding so much. My feet were actually sticking to the metal, and I thought it was rock and roll, so to me that was all cool. But when I started seeing drummers slide around on the pedals, I was like, whoa, and I tried doing that, and I was actually tearing the skin on the bottom of my feet, so it didn't quite work as well as I had hoped. Now, some of you guys might say, hey, well, it works for me. Well, it probably does if you have a really nice smooth pedal on the foot plate. There's some pedals out there that have raised metal to display the brand name or something on there, some lines or some circles or whatever. And unless you got like supersonic strong caveman feet, that's great. But if you have kind of girly feet like me, you're probably going to want to wear some shoes. So the next thing I was noticing is that I couldn't really play in heavy-duty shoes, like basketball shoes or weight training shoes, and definitely not in soccer cleats and definitely not in work boots. But don't get me wrong, there are some guys out there who can do it. But I'd say as a starting point, find a shoe that actually slides on the rug. When I go into a shoe store, I put the shoes on, the salesman must think I'm out of my mind because I'm moonwalking around on the floor. And, I actually had one guy say, what are you doing? And I said, it's a long story, I'm a drummer. And he's like, hey, cool, man, so am I. And we got into talking about this technique, and he's like, oh, that's so cool. Because he was playing in really heavy basketball shoes, and he says he was sticking to the pedal too much. Because a lot of court shoes are meant to stick to the court, the ground and the floor in the basketball court. So I said, well, I'm looking for a shoe that slides. I don't really endorse any shoe or anything like that, but I always try to find something that will slide on the pedal. So let me demonstrate just what I'm talking about as far as sliding on the pedal here. So if you look down at my foot, you're going to see that I can actually slide with ease here. Okay, if I put my foot on the side of the ground, I can really slide quite easily. Okay, so the same thing happens on a pedal. I want to be able to slide, not like ice. You don't want, that's going to be too much, but you want to be able to have a nice smooth slide so you can actually get around the pedal if you need. So I'm trying to find something that's smooth on the bottom with a little bit of a grip, so when I need the grip, if I'm not sliding, I've got it. So it's something to just experiment with. So that's what I would check out first. Okay, so to get to the technique itself, okay, let me just show you what it is, and then I'm going to explain what it is. So here's what it looks like. So you can see that my foot is sliding back and forth on the pedal. Now, you might also notice that my foot is back further than it would be if I was playing heel down. If I'm playing heel down, I try to cover the whole entire foot plate. But when I play heel up, I try to come back a little bit more. And when I play slide technique, I even come back a little bit more sometimes. That becomes a personal preference, and you'll probably end up doing the same thing over time. So the first thing that happens, and that's why it's good to have a good pedal, that's why I mentioned you want to have a good pedal for this, is if I'm stepping down for my initial stroke 1, as I lift my foot, the spring is doing its job in lifting the beater, and I've moved my foot just slightly forward, and I'm pressing down again. Now if I go back to the starting point, which is a little further back, step down on the pedal, lift my foot, and step down again, That's pretty much as slow motion as I can do this, because this is supposed to be for a fast technique. So here it looks a little faster. Now check this out in slow motion. So sometimes when I demonstrate this to people, they still go, well, I don't get how that works. You know, it's funny, you almost have to try it to see how it works. You know, it's sort of like a weird little magic trick. It's like, whoa, how did that just happen? But the key to try is to don't even hold sticks in your hands, don't try to incorporate that with a beat, is just simply have the discipline to sit there and practice trying to get 2 notes as fast as you can. And I always say, try to go da-da, da-da. And that's the goal, da-da. So the speed that I've been playing it, okay? It'll get faster and faster as time goes on, but you want to try to get da-da. Something like this. Now, of course, that may not happen right off the bat. Something like this might happen. Now, hopefully you won't get that extreme, but I've seen that happen, believe it or not, because people, they go, I'm freaking out, I don't know how to do this. Is be completely relaxed and just stay focused on what you're doing down here, you know, because the ultimate goal is to get that da-da, you know, and there's no rush to get that da-da. And the reason you want to get it a little faster is because when you're playing fast like that, you want to use heel up, but if you play slow, you don't need to use the slide. You can simply just do 2 strokes with heel up, something like this. So you'll notice on that example that I didn't use the slide technique because the speed was just too slow. I only use the slide technique for faster doubles. So it's kind of like a double stroke roll for your foot. Now for you double bass players, start practicing this with your left foot. Imagine the possibilities if you could go right, right, left, left, right, right, left, left with your feet. You'd just be flying. It'd be just absolutely amazing. So practice that technique as much as you can, and you'll see how your speed is going to improve in no time at all. Another bass drum technique that I've recently stumbled across is something that's been around for quite some time, but hasn't really been made that popular until recently. The technique that I'm talking about is the heel-toe technique. Now, the first time I saw this was in an old Steve Gadd video, but there wasn't much elaboration on how he really did that. I mean, he talks about it a little bit, but it was like, wow, is that ever that's so cool. I can't believe how cool that was. But I never really practiced it until almost 20 years later. The way to get this technique happening is to really play heel down, and you're going to get a stroke with the toe and with the heel. Now this takes a little bit of practice. This is still a work in progress for me, so I still have to practice this a little bit each day. But let me demonstrate what this looks like. I'll show you what it looks like, and then I'll explain what you can do with this to start developing heel-toe. Now you might look at that and go, wow, is that ever cool? Well, it's exactly what I think. Now, how am I doing that? I have no idea. No, I'm just kidding. Let me show you. But at first when I saw this, I had no idea what was going on. This is where the spring and the footboard really have an important part in what's happening here. Now the first initial stroke is the front of my foot coming down, and immediately after, I'm just simply, almost like I'm slamming my heel down, but not super hard, because sometimes it doesn't always work, is you have to get this nice flow of your foot in play to get this happening. And there's some guys out there that play this thing absolutely amazingly fast, so that's sort of my goal as well, is to try to get the heel-toe technique down really, really super fast. So if I demonstrate it again for you, I'm going to try to do it slow. I have a hard time playing this slow, as you may as well, but see if you can do it slow, because if you can do it slow, believe it or not, playing it faster is actually easier. It's so weird. Watch this. So the heel-toe technique is great for just consistent singles, but even better for really fast doubles. So if you really want to elaborate on this technique, I would suggest picking up Jared Falk's Bass Drum Secrets DVD, which he goes over all the applications of this very, very cool technique. So now that you've learned all of these different bass drum techniques, it's time to take this application to the drum set and start applying them to various drum beats. Now you might notice as I'm demonstrating these, I might play some with heel up, some with heel down, maybe even some with heel toe. That's not something I'm thinking about, that's just something that seems to be working for me after playing it for so long. It's almost like a habit. So at your stages, maybe you could start with heel down, and then go back and try them with heel up, and then try some of them with heel toe. See which one works best for you. Let's get started with developing bass drum independence. let's take a look at some various hi-hat foot techniques. Now, surprisingly enough, this is an incredible instrument. There are so many sounds and so many things we can do with the hi-hat. I'm not referring to the whole drum set. I mean, we know that's already cool. This guy right here is going to become your best friend on the drum set. There's so many different sounds. Let's start off with the basic and obvious ones. Okay, so obviously, if I just step down on the pedal with heel up, I'm going to get a tight, crisp, chick type of sound. Something like this. So that would be heel up with a nice, tight, crisp hi-hat closing. If I play heel down, much the same as the application of the bass drum, I'm not going to get quite as much power as heel up because I'm not getting my whole leg into it. I'm just going to play from the ankle through the foot. So I'm still going to get a closing, but you notice it's not going to be as crisp and as tight. So you can notice that that one is definitely a bit of a mellower sound. So now you have the tight, crispy one and the loose, sloshier one. Now the next one I'm going to do is also going to be heel down, but I'm not going to put as much pressure on the front of my foot to kind of give almost like an orchestral cymbal splash sound. When you got those guys in parades going whoosh, we can get that same application with our hi-hat. Watch this. Heel down, slightly bringing down pressure with my foot. Something like this. So you can see how I was letting that ring. So it's another nice sound. You get an initial attack of the two cymbals striking one another, and then letting the top cymbal ring. It's a nice, almost like a hi-hat sizzle, almost like a splash sound. Now let me show you what a hi-hat splash looks like. Okay. Now this one, what I'm going to do is going to be much more of an attack on the hi-hat, but I'm going to drive my heel into the foot plate. Now, what I do, and I've noticed a lot of drummers do this, especially if you have a size 9 foot or larger, I turn my foot a little bit to the left just so I can get my heel a little bit higher up on the foot plate, because if I just kick it here on the heel plate, I'm going to get nothing. So I want to try to get the sound by stepping on the bottom part of the foot plate of the hi-hat stand. Now if I have my foot directly on with the pedal, you can see what's happening with my foot. That's not going to quite work, and that's very uncomfortable. So this is the reason why my foot is over to the side when I get this hi-hat splash sound. Something like this. So with that one, you could see there was definitely more attack than the one I played previous. That's kind of a fun one, especially if you're rocking away and you want to get a really nice loud hi-hat sound. That's a great one. You can just play that on quarter notes or eighth notes or whatever your foot can possibly play at that time. So the next step to that technique is going back to almost like the heel-toe technique we talked about with the bass drum. And what this one is, I'm trying to think who I saw play this first. It might have been Marvin Smitty Smith or Tommy Campbell or one of those great drummers. And I was totally fascinated by this because it sounded like he was playing the hi-hat with his hand, with a stick, but it was simply just an open and close technique with the foot. And what it is you're going to do that initial splash that I just showed you with the heel coming out like that to splash the cymbal. Then your toe is going to come back in and close the hi-hat. So you're going to have this open and closed technique. So initially, I'm going to have my foot to an angle, so I'm going to go open, closed, open, closed, open, closed, open, closed. It sounds something like this. So that's a pretty cool sound. And if you can incorporate that with your everyday beats, maybe you're playing a beat on the ride cymbal, bass drum, and snare, try to add the element of hi-hat foot splashing is what it's been called. So that's a very cool one. Now, the next thing that I like to do, especially if I'm incorporating the hi-hat with a stick, the foot plays a very important role because depending on the sound that I want up here, it's all controlled by my foot. A lot of people don't put the two together and they go, oh, gee, I never thought of it that way. Well, if I play with my heel up, really pressing down on the pedal, and if I hit the hi-hat, listen to the crispiness and the tightness of the hi-hat. So as you can see, I've got quite a bit of weight on my leg pushing down on that pedal. So that's pretty much as tight as I can get it. Now, if I put my heel down and don't put so much pressure on the toe of the foot plate of the hi-hat stand, and I hit the hi-hat, listen to how this sounds. Now, if I take even more pressure off the front of my foot and completely relax my foot, so basically I don't have very much pushing down on the pedal, it's almost like my heel is just relaxing as if I was normally sitting down in a movie theater watching a movie. If I hit the hi-hat now, watch the sound, listen for the sound, what happens here? And one more example is if I completely take the pressure off the foot plate, but not my foot off, because if I take my foot off, it's going to lift the hi-hat. So I want to take it just so these guys are barely touching one another, almost so my hi-hats want to move a little bit. This will be great for you hard rocking guys. You know, you don't have to put too much pressure on the left foot. And now it's almost like I'm just simply holding the pedal down as lightly as I can to really get a beefy hi-hat sound. Something like this. So all those sounds have a very important role with that left foot. That left foot will do that. I'm going to give you a little example of something that I like to do when I do some drum solos, especially if I like to incorporate my hi-hat in the solos. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to play some simple patterns on the hi-hat with my sticks, but I'm going to change the pressure of my left foot on the pedal. And you hear the pitch change of the cymbals. Okay? Now, I always say be careful if you have really cheap, pie plate cymbals. You don't want to press too hard on the pedal because you could, invert your bell. That's the bell of the cymbal right there. Make sure you got a decent set of hi-hats if you're going to try this at home. Okay, try this at home. So watch this. I'm just going to change the pressure of my foot as I'm playing just some simple patterns here on the hi-hat so you can hear the difference of what my foot's actually doing for this. Something like this. So that was kind of cool. It's actually fairly easy as well. And if you noticed, the only thing that was changing the pitch was my left foot, because I kept playing the hi-hat on the exact same spot every time. Very simple pattern. And it's entertaining because you can show this to people, especially non-drummers, and they're going to watch your hands, and they're not going to be watching your foot. So it's kind of a bit of a magic trick there where they're going to wonder how you're doing that. So you can entertain yourself and drummers and non-drummers all around. Opening and closing the hi-hat can simply add element of time to your beat. If it's audible enough, meaning you can hear it, it's really going to add a nice sound over to the left side of your kit. In most cases when you're playing live, or especially in the recording studio, you're going to have a microphone just for the hi-hat itself. So developing that independence with the left foot, creating those different sounds, is going to add a whole new depth and dimension to your playing. It's also very important because sometimes you might be playing with some musicians that maybe their time isn't as good as yours. And by having that extra sound, if I'm just playing open and closed hi-hat with my left foot, they might be able to see it if they can't hear it. Maybe you're rocking out so loud that you can't really hear the hi-hat. The bass player might be able to see your left foot, or he might be able to see the hi-hat closing and go, ah, there's the time, because I know this drummer that I play with has awesome time. So not only is it audible, it's visual too, which really helps. And something you might notice that I do a lot when I play, especially if you're watching us play with the band tracks, is a lot of times I'll rock my foot, okay? And that's sort of my inner sense of time. So even when I'm holding the hi-hat shut, sometimes even when I'm playing just maybe quarter notes or eighth notes with the left foot, you might see my foot rocking. Well, that's actually doing nothing for the sound of the hi-hat. You hear nothing. That is just sort of my little way of saying, okay, this is where the time is. I'm feeling it internally. So even if I'm doing something that's completely different and, maybe in a different type of time feel than what I'm playing with my left foot, that is my time source. That's just a habit that I developed. Something that I see a lot of guys do, though, is they'll get their heel hitting the foot plate. You don't want to do that, especially if you're in the recording studio or even live, because you can hear that. That will pick it up, unless you're going for that sound. Maybe it's something you can invent, saying, hey, I'm now playing, my left foot on the foot plate of my hi-hat stand. But try not to get into the habit of actually hitting your heel plate on the hi-hat foot pedal there, because that's going to be a little bit annoying, especially to a recording engineer. And if you're doing this type of thing, if you happen to get into this habit, make sure your hi-hat's not squeaking. If it's going week, 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 you're just going to spray it with some oil. It's an instrument that we use all the time, so there's a lot of moving parts in the hi-hat stand. So every now and then, don't be afraid to just give it a good coat with some WD-40. If you're not comfortable with that, take it to your local music store. Ask one of the drum guys there and say, hey, is there any way you can help me get rid of this squeak? Because hi-hat stands will sometimes tend to do that. They'll tend to squeak, and it's pretty easy to eliminate that in most cases. So anyways, that wraps it up for the hi-hat section. And have some fun with exploring your hi-hat sounds. Let's take a look at developing hi-hat foot independence. In these exercises, you're going to notice that we're going to play the hi-hat on 2 and 4, or on the quarter notes, sometimes on the ands. We're even going to do some examples where we're going to play a hi-hat foot splash. So let's take a look at developing hi-hat independence.